Welcome to episode 162 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Rick Witter from Shed 7 to talk about their new album, A Matter of Time. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Catherine and Jessica from Smoke Fairies. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Shed 7 celebrate their 30th anniversary this year with the release of A Matter of Time, their first album in more than 6 years. In this interview, frontman Rick Witter talks about the early days of the band, the writing and recording of the album, their 30th anniversary, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Rick Witter from Shed 7. Hi Rick, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Hi Mark, thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure to have you, Rick. I'd like to go back to the start. Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Well, I remember the first 7-inch single I bought was Shawaddy Waddy, Under the Moon of Love, when I was probably around about 9, I think. And I remember just loving that, probably because it was bright and colourful and catchy. And then I started to realise that you can actually quite like some cool bands too. So, so that was the start-off point. I remember being a massive fan of Howard Jones when he first came on the scene, to the point where I did have quite a lot of Howard Jones posters all over my bedroom wall. And then on going to kind of big school and getting involved with a set of friends that all liked the same kind of things, that's when the kind of seriously credible music started coming out. So we got into the Smiths quite a lot. We were kind of outcasts in our year at school. There was maybe 6 or 7 of us that were big fans of the Smiths, and everyone else liked your generic pop, really. So we were kind of the weirdos for liking that miserable music. But how wrong could they be?
I didn't discover the Smiths until later on, which and they blew my head away. You know, I still play them now. Shawaddy Waddy, I remember them on Top of the Pops back in the day. Howard Jones, you know, absolute legend as well. Did you have I bet you had your hair like Howard Jones, you know, the sort of 80s do?
Yes, I did like to copy my favourite stars at the time. I did all of that. I mean, to be honest, me and Paul met when we were about 11 at first year at school, and we kind of bonded and connected over a love of music. So, you know, Paul was a big Simple Minds fan. I was always more of the U2 fan. So we'd be at war about that for a start. But then we had collective good music. We were both really into Duran Duran. We both loved Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I've got memories of me and Paul in my kitchen when we were maybe 13 years old, going wild to Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And it was things like that that really made us want to be in a band as well, you know. So I think, you know, without jumping ahead too soon, I do think with this new album, I think me and Paul have kind of looked back on our past and our love of music over the years and kind of taken little hints of all of these bands from that period and onwards. And you can, you know, there's nothing that really jumps out, but you can hear the joy in it of us growing up loving listening to music together. But, you know, as I say, I remember Joshua Tree came out in about 87, didn't it? And I remember I used to deliver a local free newspaper on a Wednesday called The Advertiser, and that was my go-to music on my Walkman. Not many papers got delivered, I must say, so I must have been very rock and roll even at an early age. I think, sadly, and I shouldn't really say this, and don't do this, kids, but I think most of them ended up in the River Foss.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I used to have a paper round as well from first year to 5th year, and they used to have the Walkman on, and they used to play, you know, Joshua Tree, Octone Babies, NXS,
yeah.
And I did the Belfast Telegraph Monday to Friday, but on a Thursday I delivered a local paper, and it used to end up in the river.
Right, well, there you go. At least we had some scruples, because I would never have done that if somebody had paid for it and they were expecting it through the door. It was only because it was a free newspaper. I don't think I would have got away with it, to be honest. But I like to think, as a maybe 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid at that time, all of these older people I should have been delivering the advertiser to around the city of York, they would have thought, who's that lad who looks like Bono? I was pretending to be Bono delivering my newspaper, or not delivering my newspaper. I used to try and be too cool for school. I probably still do, to be fair.
Well, it's mad. I mean, it's mad that we both had that same experience with the local paper. So has music always been the career path that you wanted to follow, or did you have other ambitions growing up?
No, always music. I feel very fortunate being a 51-year-old man now that I've managed to have a career in it. I mean, as I say, me and Paul probably first started writing songs together when we were about 12 or 13. And quite clearly, they're just sketches at that age, really, I mean, we do probably still have cassettes in the attic of what we were doing then. I mean, we were always quite creative, to the point where we would sit in each other's bedrooms designing covers to these songs that we'd yet to write, literally, to the minute detail. And we'd even have spin-off bands of the band that we were in. I think we did our first gig when we were about 13 in front of about 8 German foreign exchange students who Paul's sister was party to at that time. It's just always been there. I do remember being 15 or 16 and being interviewed by the careers officer just as I was about to leave school, and them asking me what I wanted to do and saying, well, my first love is music and I want to try and make it in a band or whatever in the music industry. And I was told it was a pipe dream, grow up, you've got to get a proper job. All of that happened. I'd like to go back and meet that careers officer and buy him a drink. That'd be nice. But yeah, always been the case. We were doing gigs when we were 14 and 15 in pubs with songs that we'd written. So it's just always been there. So as I say, I do feel, because it is a very fickle industry and it's very difficult to break into. And a lot of luck is involved in being in the right place at the right time. But I've always felt that this is what I should have been doing from a very early age. So I've never taken it for granted. There's times where you do perhaps forget yourself, but I've never really, as a rule, taken it for granted, because I know how difficult it is and I know how fortunate it is. But I keep saying the word fortunate, but I also believe that we deserve a place here because we're good at what we do.
Absolutely. Can you remember the first song that you and Paul wrote that you thought, this is a really good song?
Well, we were in a school band together, which was called Brockley Haven, which Tom, the bass player, was also in, because we were all in the same year group at school. So this is when we were like 14, 15. And we were big on the House Martins at the time. So we'd cover a lot of House Martins songs. We covered some Elvis songs, some Eddie Cochran songs. But we also, this is the point where we did start to write our own stuff. And, obviously a lot of it is just on a cassette somewhere and has never really been heard. But yeah, there was some, for that age, we were good. We at our school, we used to do these things called pop shops, where you were invited down if you were interested in learning an instrument or writing songs. You could go there and older people would be there to kind of tutor you. And the aim was you'd go for a day, try and write a song with these tutors, and then perform it to the group at the end of the day. But me and Paul would always turn up with a song fully formed. It was that kind of, that's how much we were into it. So we had a lot of songs. I'm trying to think off the top of my head any titles. We had a song called Someone in My Treehouse, which was pretty cool. A song called Breathe, which was pretty cool. But it was only, I think it was at the time where the Stone Roses released their first album in 1989. That was the turning point for us, I think. That was when we thought, right, what a brilliant debut album by a band, and the look about them and their attitude and everything. We were still young kids, really, at this point, and we fell in love with that. And we thought, right, this is the time now where we need to start upping our game a little bit, which is when we kind of decided to call ourselves Shed 7. And then we started to write things like Ocean Pie and Dolphin and Missing Out. So it was that kind of key 1989, 1990 period that was a big turning point for us. And I guess the Stone Roses was a big part of that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what an album. It's probably my second favourite album of all time. It's amazing that such an album had a huge impact and made people like yourselves and, Oasis form and The Verve, bands like that. We wouldn't have you guys without that album.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. And it's probably the album I've bought the most over the space of time it's been out.
Same.
It's just simply from wearing it out.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I first heard of Shed 7 at the height of Britpop. What do you think of when you cast your mind back to that period of madness?
Well, it starts before Britpop, really. We formed in 1990, and by about 1992, the Manchester scene as such had pretty much died a death, and there wasn't really that much guitar stuff going on, really, just pre-Suede. It was all your dance, your acid, your rave. And we're from York, which is quite a small city, really, with not a lot going for it musically, or certainly not then. I mean, it's quite a healthy scene now. I mean, York at that time, if I remember rightly, was, very folk influenced. You'd walk into a hearty pub and there'd be a roaring open fire and there'd be two people playing some folk songs next to the fire. So we genuinely thought we were the only band in the country doing guitar music. We genuinely thought, I mean, we were young and naive, but we genuinely thought, right, we want to do something like what we've grown up with. So, we're just kind of writing what we're writing, which became Change Giver. And then that starts to do well. Obviously, Suede came on the scene, and so did Blur. And then you discover that there's a band from down south called the Blue Tones, and there's a band from Liverpool called the Lars, and there's a band called Echo Belly. And you realise that there's also a lot of other people at that time thinking the same as us, probably. And before we were classed as Britpop, we were known as the new wave of new wave. We were put into that genre. And then we became lad rock. Lad rock became a thing for a few months, I think, and that was probably instigated by Oasis. And then Britpop obviously happened. So I just remember it being a mad time. It was really exciting, not just musically, fashion, art, everything about it all seemed to kind of just crash into each other and became what was known as the Britpop period. Just really exciting, but also hard work, because you go from being an unknown band who are trying to get somewhere to a band who are having all these hits and going on all these telly programs, but there's never any time to really stop and think about what you're doing, because you're just so busy caught up doing it. So, there'd be times where instead of being able to appreciate what's happening, you're being told to get to Spain because you've got to go and do that over there. And then where's these 3 B-sides you promised us? So it was always a really busy time. It's only at the end of it, really, that we could stop and assess what had happened. But what a time, I'm pleased that we were caught up in that time, because in this current day and age, I can't envisage a time where newsreaders at 10 o'clock at night will be discussing which of these 2 bands will be number one. I think with the way the music industry's changed and the way there's so many different charts, so many different ways of buying music, I don't think we're ever going to see that again. So I'm quite pleased that we were kind of part of that bit of history.
And there hasn't really been anything like that since, really?
No, there hasn't. Things move on. And it is a shame, really. I mean, I sometimes will speak to my kids and talk about vinyl, and they're only really now understanding what vinyl is. Everything is about clicking buttons and getting things instantly, which was why our last album was called Instant Pleasures. I feel a bit sorry for the generations that have missed out on having to travel to a record shop and excitedly look around to see what the new releases are and hold things in the hand and smell the vinyl. That, to me, was part of my youth and growing up. And people from this generation now would just laugh and go, oh, what you on about? But there was something quite exciting about putting effort and work and time into going and getting these songs rather than just clicking a button and there it is. The B-sides, we always prided ourselves on writing good B-sides, because I thought it was just as important that if you're going to flip your 7-inch single over, it shouldn't just be any old tap just because you've got a single out, which is, again, why bands like the Stone Roses were brilliant. I mean, how many other bands could write a song called Mersey Paradise and decide that that's just going to go on a B-side? I mean, it's crazy, really. Most bands would give the right arm to have that as their A-side, So it's one of these things where putting love and attention into it is a very important part of the process for us. And it's a shame that seems to be a bit of a dying art. There's still a lot of people doing it, but it's not the be-all and end-all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I love B-sides, but I suppose back in the day, was it not a bit more pressure for the likes of yourselves because there were so many variants of the same single, with, different tracks, live tracks, B-sides, sometimes you're releasing 3 versions of a single.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So, yeah, I do remember in the mid-90s, if you had a single ready to come out, they'd want it over 2 different CDs, which would mean you'd probably have to have 4 B-sides per single, which is almost half an album. But, apart from the odd one that slipped through the net, I think we always had quite a good ratio of good songs to bad B-sides, really. The positive with us from the first album, we had a lot of material. We cherry-picked what we thought was best to go on Change Giver. And then we did have a lot of extra tracks that were perfectly poised for B-sides. I guess towards the end of the 90s, around the Let It Ride era, we were writing to order more. And as I say, apart from 1 or 2 of them, they all stood up really to what they needed to do.
Well, congratulations on the new record, A Matter of Time. It's an absolute banger. 6 years since your last album, Instant Pleasures, which took 16 years. So we haven't had to wait as long this time. It's only been 6 years, as I said.
Yeah.
So when did this one start?
Well, it only actually started about March 2022, and we'd finished it, the writing side of it, by December 2022. So it ridiculously only actually took us about 9 months to write, which is pretty unheard of for us. I'd only guessed that the only other album that happened was A Maximum High in 96, which funnily enough is one of our key albums, really. And all through the process of writing this one, I kept kind of thinking of Maximum High. I don't really know why. I think me and Paul got into some real deep purple patch with it. It just seemed to just happen so naturally without any thought really given to it. It just felt like we were just doing a winner from the get-go, really. We decided in March, let's try and write some new songs. After a couple of the band members leaving and getting a couple of new guys in, we did a big tour. And then we thought, what's next? And we thought, right, this is like a clean slate. This is a brand new start for us in this version. Let's see what we can come up with. So me and Paul took ourselves off. And literally, as I say, within a few months, we'd had half of it there. And we were thinking, well, this is sounding pretty cool. And by the end of 9 months, we knew we were ready to go and record, And as I say, yeah, one idea after the other, they just kept coming out. Lyrically and melodically, for me, it was a pretty easy process, which is a very difficult thing to say because usually these things can take months and a lot of heartache and a lot of brain freeze going on. But it just didn't seem to happen like that, and I think you can really hear that in the songs. It sounds quite joyous, and it sounds like we're having a lot of fun doing it, and I kind of hope that projects onto the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, I think it's your best album you've put out. Every song's a banner, and what I love about it is it took me quite a few listens until each song started to reveal itself a bit more. And in my opinion, that's the sign of a great album. I was just listening to it in headphones, and then all of a sudden a song just right. I get that. Which we'll go into each song. Well, all my favorite ones as well. You mentioned new members, Rob, Maxfield, and Tim Willis. How have they fitted into the band?
Really well. Paul's known Maxie and Tim for a long time, just from the music scene. Both of the guys have worked with Ian Brown a lot over the years. Maxie was the drummer in Audio Web in the 90s, so we'd bumped into him a few times then. They've just fitted in really well, to be honest. They're both technically brilliant musicians, so there wasn't much trouble explaining what we wanted from them. That was pretty easy. The most important thing is to get on as people because you're in each other's pockets, and they're both really lovely guys. I think they're loving the experience of being within Shed 7. I think they're loving the opportunity to be out there playing big gigs and being part of a brand new set of songs. So, and I think that comes across. The drums sound amazing on this album. I think they're just absolutely loving it, which adds to the joyousness of this whole new Shed 7.
And the album was produced by the legendary producer Youth. So what did he bring to the sessions?
Well, youth's a bit of a genius, really. He's cantankerous and is quite difficult at times, but he is a genius, so you have to put up with these things. Um, he's just a very clever man. To say he's stoned constantly, he's quite clever, really. If I was that stoned, I wouldn't get out of bed. So, but, he just comes out with little ideas, suggests things that we might scratch our head at the time, thinking, well, where is that going? And then you try the ideas and realize, oh yeah, okay, that works. I mean, because he's a bass player, the rhythm section get it quite a lot via youth. So the concentration on the bass and the drums was the main thing. He'd question my lyrics, he'd question what I'm on about, and I'd have to fight my corner with him. One day he might say, "Why are you singing about love, man?" And then 3 days later he's saying, "Why don't you sing more about love, man?" So it's very difficult. It's like every day a lot of people would imagine going to Spain to record an album of songs that you've written for 3 weeks must be just a joyous, lucky, how lucky are you for doing that? But it isn't. It's really hard work. And every day is like an exam. Every song is like an exam. But when you come away from that with a set of songs that you're all really happy with, then it's totally worth it. But, it's hair losing. But, I think anything that comes easy isn't worth it. You've got to fight for things that you really believe in. And if you have put a lot of time and effort into something, then the rewards feel a lot more deserved, Well,
let's talk about some of the tracks. Lead single, Kissing California. It was one of my summer anthems. I played it loads, but I guess that's the point. What can you tell me about the genesis of that track?
Well, that was one of the first ones written for the album. I think that was one of the March songs in 2022. I remember Paul had sent me the main guitar hook for the verse for that song via an email. And this is romantic. I remember driving around the ring road of York. Obviously, I was going somewhere. I wasn't just driving for no reason. And I thought, right, I'm going to listen to that idea in the car. So I pulled in, connected my phone to my stereo in the car, and I was just listening to the guitar riff going round whilst I was driving along the ring road. And there's a fish and chip shop called the Weatherby Whaler just off the A59 outside of York. And at that point, as I'm driving past the Weatherby Whaler, I started... And this is unusual because usually I would think of a melody and then I'd take a while to start fitting words around the melody that I've come up with. But immediately the melody and the words came together and I just started going, what would you do if I called for you? You'd wrap your arms around California. So I had to pull in again quickly and start jotting these things down. And that's how most of these things happen. I'm caught unaware. And I have to get it written down very quickly before it's gone again, because the amount of times over the years I've woke up in the night humming something or thinking of some type of lyrical couplet, and I can't be bothered opening my eyes, and I'll lie there and think, right, I'll remember that tomorrow morning, and then it's just gone. And there must be so many hits that have left me over the years and just disappeared into the ether. So I've learned from my mistakes there, and I always make sure I do either jot something down or hum it into my phone. So that song, I mean, I don't really want to go into lockdown because it's boring, but I guess a lot of lyrical things that I've been jotting down over the last few years were formed out of being in that situation. So, I mean, Kissing California, basically the crux of it is about going out and having the best possible time you possibly can with the person that you're most into. And it's a celebration. Let's just go out and have the best time possible, which I guess at that point everybody was longing for. So subconsciously, I guess that's where that comes from. And plus, I love it when we write really catchy 3.5-minute pop songs.
Well, talking about catchy pop songs, Hold the Front Page, This Is the Modern Age. My favourite song on the album today, because they're all great, is Real Love. Yesterday it was Love and Ring the Changes, but today I was getting off Real Love.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's more kind of a look at the modern state of the world, really, and certainly our country. So when I'm talking about real love, I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about people who are actually in charge of us, and who should be responsible for steering us in the best possible way that we could all go. But more and more you realise that they're just all out for themselves. I guess they always have been, but ridiculously now it's getting embarrassing. So real love, it's so hard to find. Real love, the lasting kind. It's all about being looked after by the people who are supposed to be doing it for you. So hold the front page. This is the modern age, dig your own grave. It's like, all right, we'll look after ourselves, shall we? So, I mean, I'm not really that political, and I've never really steered down that path, but I just felt a bit duty bound to this time.
It's a great chorus as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's certainly very catchy. This is the great thing when, as I say, when I was writing most of these melodies throughout last year, it was exciting me because nearly everything I was coming up with, I couldn't shake out of my own head. So I knew that we were onto some kind of winner. I was often going to sleep on a night with these ideas going round and round my head, and it was actually doing my head in. So it's nice. So it's nice to have it out there and let them and do everybody else's heads in.
You have lots of special guests on this album for the first time. You've Rowetta from Happy Mondays. She performs on In Ecstasy. Laura McClure from Reverend the Makers on Tripping With You, and Peter Doherty on the album Closer Throwaways. So how did you get all them guys involved?
Well, I think that started with Rowetta, and that started because, again, I'm sat in my living room. Paul had sent me the crux of In Ecstasy, the song on the guitar, and I'm just coming up with the verses. And then when I got to the point where I was thinking of what to do in the chorus, the melody that came into my head, I immediately thought of Rowetta. I just thought I could just hear her singing that. And then when I thought of the words, cover me in ecstasy, stand with me in ecstasy, it just kind of, the whole song had this kind of early 90s vibe to it anyway. So as I say, once I'd come up with the words to it, again, I thought, well, I could hear Rowetta singing this, not only melodically, but the actual words I'm singing. So because we kind of know her a little bit, we've done stuff with the Mondays a lot in the past, I just got in touch with her and said, look, Rowetta, we're writing a new set of stuff. I've written this thing. I just can't shake you off it. I'm just wondering if you'd like to hear it and see if you'd be up for joining in any way. And she said, I'd love to hear it. Sent it her. She loved it and said, I'd love to get involved. It was as easy as that, really. And it works really well. What the finished product that you hear is exactly what I could hear in my head before we'd done anything with it. So I was really pleased with that. So because we kind of knew we'd got Rowetta on there, we just thought, well, why stop there? I mean, we've never ever done this before. This is the first time we've ever had another featured artist on anything we've ever done, really. Well, I'll tell a lie. Clint Boone played keyboards on a couple of our songs. We had James Taylor who played organ on one of our songs. Vocally, I mean, we've never really had a featured artist vocally on any of our songs. So we thought, why stop there? So the next stop was, we played the Bingley Festival last year, and the Libertines were headlining. We were on just before them at Bingley. And as we were doing our set, I'm just singing our set, and I kept looking to the right where my family were in the wings of the stage, and I could see Pete Doherty there, but he was singing every word of all of the songs that we were playing. So I'm thinking, all right, that's interesting. He knows who we are. He knows the songs. So after the gig, I just approached him, introduced myself, never met him before, and just said, you must be a bit of a fan, you know all the words. And he said, oh, yeah, I used to love Shed 7 when I was a teenager at home. I'd learn your songs on my guitar in my bedroom and sing along. So I just said, Peter, we've got Rowetta on the album. Do you fancy joining in as well? And he just immediately went, I'd love to. And this is without knowing anything about the song that we wanted to give to him. But I immediately thought Throwaways for Peter. It just seems to fit the bill. It's one of my favourites off the album, to be honest, Throwaways. And again, that seemed to just appear so quickly. I had the whole chorus, words and melody pretty much come to me straight away, all of it. And having him on there is amazing. It's a kind of fuck you to the world, basically. It's like, yeah, you might think that we're not very cool and we're not really part of the scene, but we don't care, and we'll just carry on living the life we lead, please. And you crack on with what you're doing. And I kind of think there was times in the 90s where we felt a little bit like that anyway. You know, we weren't very credible. The music press weren't very nice to us at times. The Libertines went through a little bit of that themselves. So it all seems to kind of... The thing is with the whole of this, the whole album and everything about it, it feels like we're on some type of upward trajectory all of a sudden. After 30 years, it just feels like we're just going up a little bit. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I'm smelling it every day because it could all change with a click of a finger, like the fickle industry that the music business is. So I'm just really loving it. I'm loving the fact we've got somebody like Peter Doherty singing on one of our songs. He does it really well. It sounds like Pete, but it's very much a Shed 7 song. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on that particular song are.
It's an epic finale. That's the way I would describe it. You know, I love the strings, your voice, and initially I didn't know it was Pete singing, and then it just sort of picked up.
Yeah,
that it was, and then obviously I read the press release. But you know, it's a perfect way to end the album.
It's weird, isn't it? Because it's almost a little bit 1970s, the lush strings and the very warm sound to it. But it still fits in with everything else. One of my favourite Rolling Stones songs is called Winter off the Goat's Head Soup album, which came out in about 1974. And it's got that kind of sound to it, which pleases me immensely because I love that song. So I'm not saying it's like that. It just reminds me of that kind of thing. And I think that song is going to go on to become a little bit of a Shed 7 staple, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about 6 minutes long, isn't it?
It is, yes. But, you know, most of the best songs are.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it sort of reminded me actually in the vein of an album, the way like the Stoners had I Am the Resurrection at the end.
Yeah.
On Morning Glory, there was Champagne Supernova, and it just sort of reminded me it was in that sort of vein of a track.
Yeah. Well, we tried that on a Maximum High, and we had like a 6-7 minute song ending that album, Parallel Lines, it was called. But yeah, this is kind of, it just feels slightly different. I don't know. It needs to be that long because it's a journey. You know, it very much feels like it's a journey, and it starts and ends in a perfect manner with just so much great stuff going on through that journey, you know.
Yeah, it's an absolute belter.
Thank you.
And you were saying about the trajectory of the band. You know, I was just thinking recently, I think this is possibly the band's most successful period, because I read that the album's on course to be your highest charting album in over 30 years as a band. You know, that's amazing.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, I'll take it every day of the week. And if it means we've got to do another 30 years to get even bigger again, I'll take it and I'll work with that. But yeah, it seems a little strange that does seem to be the case. Yeah, we're playing bigger venues to more people. The love for the band at the minute just seems really immense. So long may that continue. I think we've come out with something to honour that with the love of the band at the minute. It feels like it's just grown over the past few years. We've obviously put a lot of groundwork into it. We're still a great live band. We put a lot of effort into it. I think people appreciate that and love coming to see us playing because of that. These new songs don't stick out like a sore thumb. We've already started putting some of these new songs into the sets we've been doing, and they're just fitting like a hand in a glove, to be honest with you. They're just Shed 7 songs through and through. So that's exciting for the future, because it means we can... I mean, it's difficult already with what we put in our sets because we've got too many songs to play. What do you not play? And now we've just made that position even more difficult by adding another 12 songs to that. So it makes it fun. And, you know, the fact that we're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary next year, and the fact that the very first week of that 30th anniversary, we're releasing a brand new set of songs, just sets up the whole of that year brilliantly for next year. So we're all really excited.
How do you prepare for a live show? And what do you enjoy most about performing live?
Well, ordinarily we'd decide on the set that we're going to play, and then we'd just rehearse it a few times. I mean, to be honest, some of the songs that we play, we've been playing for so long that you don't need to do much rehearsing, because it's like riding a bicycle. You just start the song and you just know exactly where it's going. It's more the newer stuff that you've got to put a bit more time and effort in to get it match fit. So just literally a little bit of rehearsing, thinking of some new different ideas. So recently we've been playing Going for Gold, which blends into Suspicious Mind by Elvis, because it's a very similar vibe, and then jumps back out of that back into Going for Gold. We'd like to think a little nice ideas, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then just the thrill of a live crowd just pulls you together, you know. I mean, I can't stop myself from swinging my hips, because it's just, you know, when you're confronted with about 3,000, 4,000 faces who just look like they're having the best time ever, there's nothing can compete with that. So you've just got to throw yourself in there. And, you know, as I say, we are a good live band. We know what we're doing. And I think over the years, the fans that come and see us know what they're going to get. So they look forward to it for months. So by the time we're all actually in the same room together, it's like a massive orgasm.
And I know you're doing some in-stores in the new year as well. Will you be going across Europe and maybe other parts of the UK and stuff? Maybe coming to Ireland, hopefully?
Well, this is what we're discussing right now as we speak. We are booking a huge Shedcember. The fans have started calling what we do at Christmas Shedcember. So we do usually do that every other year. So because it's our 30th anniversary, we are in the middle of kind of getting a tour booked together for the end of next year. And I've insisted that we have to come to Ireland and Northern Ireland, because we don't go there enough. So I'm hoping that they get put into the schedule. The years we've been announcing a lot recently, and I'm suddenly starting to feel like it's overkill. We've got stuff that we need to tell people that we're doing, but there is so much more left to tell. But we need to stagger these announcements, because it just gets a little bit too much. It's too much for my head to take what we're doing. So, you know, I don't want people who are interested in us to just be overwhelmed with things. So the key thing at the minute is the album January. And we've got lots of plans for next year, because it's our 30th. So, you know, we will stagger announcements. But yes, lots of gigs and lots of fun things.
Happy days. We must talk about the album sleeve. You know, it's a throwback to the early Verve and Oasis sleeves by Brian Cannon. Did he do this one?
No, he didn't. No, we set all that up. While we were in Spain, we invited a photographer that we know and usually comes around on tour with us taking snaps. We invited him over for the weekend and just said, like, let's snap away. So we did lots of inside studio shots. And then we just thought, let's use the scenery outside. So that particular front cover, there's the building in the background is where two of the band members were staying while we were recording. The settee was just tossed in some hedge somewhere. So we dragged that out of the hedge and put it in front of the house. It was Paul's idea for me to be holding a burning newspaper. We wanted to try and make it look like the end of the world, basically, and it kind of has that feel to it.
Yeah.
The dog on there was a stray dog that was just living at the studio because we kept feeding it. It wasn't going to go anywhere, really, was it, if it's just being petted and fed? So the dog became a friend for the 3 weeks we were there. So he's on the cover. So, no, it was all our idea. I think it also goes back before the 90s. I think that could be a classic 70s album cover.
Yeah. And what's going to happen is people are going to analyse it and look for hidden meanings.
Well, we have put a few things in there. You'll notice we've put some starlings in the top right-hand corner in the sky. You know, that wasn't on there. We didn't just happily capture a set of starlings flying around in the sky. Yes, there's little Easter eggs there if you look deep enough.
How important is it that you're still making music, new music, and not going through the motions and playing the greatest hits, but staying active as musicians creatively, and just doing it?
Well, I think it's really important. I think we've become relevant again. We were relevant in the 90s because we were there actively just being a band. And then we went through a time where, yes, we were becoming a nostalgia act, really just playing our old hits. And as good as that was, and as much as people were loving it, there does become a time where you have to really assess where the rest of your life's going. So for us to do Instant Pleasures, which was a complete mistake, but turned out to be a really great one, it was a great album, proved that we still had it in us. And I think this one, doing it so soon after the last one, after the last big gap, and coming up with what we've come up with only makes me excited for what we do next. We've already got a few ideas on the go for future stuff, but I just think it's important now. We're 51 and we're still very, very relevant, and long may that continue.
100%. If people want to understand the music of Shed 7, what are the 5 songs they should listen to?
Ooh, no, that's certainly a question and a half. Well, it's a very difficult question to answer that. There's so many of them, and I mean, they're all very us. I guess
What 5 songs have to be in the set list?
All right, okay. Well, that makes it slightly easier. Well, we could never get away with not playing Chasing Rainbows. I mean, we would get lynched if we did a gig and didn't play that song. Understandably, it's become the song for Shed 7. However, on saying that, one of the new songs off the new album, Let's Go Dancing, I think could become pretty much our new Chasing Rainbows. So I would say that Disco Down, we probably wouldn't be able to get away with. On Standby is always a massive firm favourite. Dolphin, Getting Better. I mean, I could go on, to be honest with you. I mean, we need to start being a bit more like Bruce Springsteen and play for 4 hours a night. We should be more Bruce. In fact, what a great new album title that'd be. Be More Bruce.
Be More Bruce. Or the Be More Bruce tour.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's difficult because we always leave somebody disappointed because somebody wants to hear that album track or that third B-side bonus thing that we never play. But you've got to read the room, I mean, if we could do this, if we announced that we were going to go and do 2 weeks of just B-sides, yes, there would be interest, but not as big an interest as what the gigs we do play. So it's suddenly we'd be playing in front of 500 people instead of 3,000 people. And it's not a good look for the band, unless you really make a point of making everyone aware. We're playing songs that only some of you know that are old, So right now, this minute, again, that helps that we've got new songs because we're relevant again. So we are going to be playing a lot of these new songs interspersed with some of our old hits. So, what can you do? You can't go wrong with that, can you?
I like to ask my guests the following questions. If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
Now, they've had so many of those. That's a very good question. Do you know what? I'd like to go back and relive when we did a festival in Canada where I massively saw my arse and sulked because I think it was the first time we'd been to Canada. We played a festival. And because we weren't that well known, we were playing at something like 2:00 in the afternoon, and they were still building the stage. So basically, there was scaffolding. It was a big main stage. There was scaffolding either side that they were still putting the tarpaulin over, and they were still actually erecting the scaffolding. So there was builders halfway up with drills and tool belts, making a right racket while we're trying to play our beloved songs that we wanted to play to everybody, to not much of a crowd, to be honest with you. So that annoyed me, and I'd like to go back and put that right and just ignore it and just do a great gig. So there you go. That's what I had to go back and do.
For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Shed 7 songs or any?
Any?
Well, I'd have to go towards the Smiths or the Stone Roses because they were key points in my life that kind of set me up, really. I could listen to any Smiths song and sing it from start to finish in exactly the same way that Morrissey does, even including the oohs and the ahs. And I often do that when I've had a few drinks. Me and my wife are really big fans, so you'll often find us at 2 a.m. singing loudly to the Smiths, doing it correctly. Standing Here by the Stone Roses just conjures up images of me at that point in my life where, as we've touched upon, we needed to pull our socks up a little bit and start taking things a little bit more seriously. That reminds me of those times of challenge and joy. So yeah, anything like that, it just brings back real great warm memories.
It's interesting, anytime you've mentioned the Stone Roses song, it's always been a B-side.
This is it, you see, yeah. This is it. It's incredible, really, just how they can just toss that off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, we'll just put it on that. Yeah, just that's fine.
What song or album is your guilty pleasure?
I don't think there is anything such a thing as a guilty pleasure. I know that there is, but I don't really agree with it. And, music's music, and it's for anybody. I'm long past the point. I used to be terrible. I used to be a right indie snob when I was at school. When I was at school, if it wasn't guitar led or indie, I wasn't interested. And over the years, I've learned the error of my ways. And music is just incredible. There's music that I don't like and won't really entertain, but I can totally understand the reason why it's there. So I would never slag it off. There's a reason it's there, but it's just not for me. So I would never put anything on now and have to explain to people, I'm sorry about this, I just really like this. I would never do that. I'm putting it on because I love it.
Yeah. Everybody just likes everything now, don't they, really?
Yeah, exactly. It's sources for courses. As I say, I'm not really massively into, I don't know, hardcore metal. It's not really for me, but I get it. I understand. I don't want loads of hardcore metal fans getting at me and slagging Shed 7 off for being fey indie. It's not the point. It's not for me, and that's fair enough. And, when I now hear people slagging us off, it's just fine. Don't worry about it. Just go and listen to, rather than waste your energy slagging us off, saying how rubbish we are. Don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. We'll just carry on doing what we're doing. Just go and listen to something you really want to, and just have positive energy.
I agree 100%. Last one, Rick. You've been famous for a long time now. What's the most stupidest thing you've ever bought?
Stupidest thing I've ever bought? Well, earning some money would help with that, to be honest with you. Ridiculously, after so long, and a lot of people do. People come up to me saying, how many millions do you have? And you couldn't be further from the truth. It's ridiculous, really. And I'm hoping that all changes before I die, or else all my kids will get it.
I remember back in the day watching Top of the Pops, and I used to always think all the pop stars that were on Top of the Pops were millionaires. Well,
exactly, that's what I used to think, and then I did it 10 times, and the truth couldn't be further from that, I'll tell you. I've never really bought anything substantially large or for a lot of money, or been frivolous, to be honest with you. I mean, I just get stuff. I'll buy daft little things. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but my wife tells me off quite a lot. She thinks I'm a bigger kid than the children when we come to things like Christmas, because I'll just buy cheap tat to hang up around the house, and she's go, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing buying that? So, I can't tell you that I just blew loads of money on a Rolls Royce, because A, I haven't got enough money to do that, and B, I would probably choose something else over that anyway.
Brilliant. Well, that's me done, Rick. Is there anything you'd like to mention before we wrap up? Just you tell people where they can get the album and when it's released.
Well, the album's out on the 5th of January, which isn't far away now. You can pre-order it if you so desired from shed7.com, I believe. I'm really proud of it. I hope that people do like it. I think it does. It goes on its own journey. It's an album like albums used to be, where we've thought about the track listing, we've thought about how it flows, and it tells its own little story. And we're hoping that it's one of these albums that sticks around for a long time, because it seems to have that kind of classic sound to it. So go and check it out. As I say, 5th of January. And then we'll see you out there on tour.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's quality the whole way through. Every single track. Loads of earworms. Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you for that.